Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
The foolish dream of mortals.
Alright, what's up, guys? I just wanted to give some of my thoughts and a review on the closed beta for Lost Ark. I played that for the duration while it was available, and now that they've given the release date for the game, I thought it'd be a good time to give my thoughts on it and my impressions and opinion on whether or not the game is worth checking out. So let's take a look at this launch trailer here. The game, graphically, it looks fantastic. The animations are great. It's got the atmosphere. It looks epic. However, the gameplay doesn't really match up quite to how much hype they put into these trailers, but it's still really good. The game's definitely very cinematic when you're playing it. It has more of an MMO feel to it though than an ARPG, especially in terms of progression. It's very much your typical MMO. You're going to do this dungeon and you're going to get this specific piece of gear, or you have a chance to get this specific piece of gear. So you'll be doing a lot of basic, just running here, do X, run here, do Y. The game kind of leads you through all the questing, kind of carrot on a stick. It's like playing WoW with the quest tracker add-on. It tells you exactly where to go, what enemies to kill, what to grab, who to talk to. All the quests are pretty much, from at least what I played in the closed beta, it takes you from area to area. You don't really do any backtracking for the most part. It's very, very guided, kind of on rails feel. So you'll get 5 or 6 quests. They'll all go to the same area, and then you'll get another 5 or 6 quests, and that'll take you to the next area, etc., etc. The story, that being said, so far from what I had played of it, it was above average. It was actually somewhat interesting. I won't give any spoilers, but in the sort of intro tutorial, there was already a couple of plot twists that I wasn't really expecting from the game that were interesting. The characters were pretty well done. It definitely seems in the story that you're just kind of like a backdrop character. It's like the story's happening and you're just there. Almost as an observer. You're not really having an impact or an influence on anything. At the early stages of the game, they make it pretty clear that your character is, you know, kind of weak, and you don't stack up to the main NPCs, which is, you know, fine, I guess. It's not really a problem, but it kind of makes you feel like your character is sort of meaningless in the overall story at the beginning. And the loot was not very interesting in my opinion. It's just, you know, the next piece of gear has slightly more stats than the last piece of gear. It's all kind of color coordinated, what you'd expect from WoW. So the green pieces of gear aren't as good as the blue or the purple or the orange, and the higher tiered colors of gear just have better stats. Nothing really game changing or build enabling items so far that I had seen, and I was in the mid or the late 20s in the beta. The skill system, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a cross between what you would expect from like D2 and D3. So you're kind of you have a lot more customization and build choice like D2, but in D3 you can kind of swap your skills in and out, respec. It didn't really seem like there was any kind of cost. You just couldn't change skills while you were in a dungeon. So I assume, you know, same thing if you're in a PvP arena, I'm sure you're not going to be able to change skills or anything. In that aspect, the skills have some have different effects, slightly altered effects for PvP and PvE. So some abilities might give you an AoE stun in PvE, whereas in PvP the stun just might be a reduced value, or instead of a stun it might slow, etc. Just things like that. The other comparison I would give with D3 is that all of your skills have various, it's like each skill almost has its own little passive skill tree that you can choose abilities from for that skill that will either alter it or buff it, give it different effects, things like that, which is interesting. It definitely seems like there'll be a lot of choices. I'm sure there'll be more than one viable and strong build depending on what you want to do with each class, which is good. I like that. And you can switch between them, so I'm sure, you know, every class is going to have different setups for you know, solo, PvE, group dungeons, raids, etc. This game has raids. So you have, I can't remember how many abilities, if it was 8, but around 8 abilities or so. And you can level up the skills like in D2, and they get stronger. As you level them up, you get more access to the different sort of passives within them. You have a certain number of passive points that you also gain from leveling up, which you can put into those abilities to sort of buff the ones that you want to buff. Since we weren't at the highest level, I don't really know exactly what that will look like in the end game, but I was finding it that in my playing it was better to buff, you know, the low cooldown skills as high as I could, and then keep sort of the utility ones at the lower level. Some of them had, you know, pretty heavy diminishing returns, so that was interesting in regards to the skill selection. The progression, it's not my favorite style of progression. It's very basic, straightforward. There's not really any RNG killing monsters. There's not really any loot that drops from them that's usable. I don't know if that changes at the end of the game, but everything that dropped off monsters was worse than what I'd gotten from quest rewards or from inside a dungeon. And pretty much you're on the dungeon once and you'll get the piece of gear you're looking to get from it. There was only one dungeon, and maybe that changes down the road. It seemed like it was changing a little bit as I was getting in the higher levels. There was, instead of just being one piece of gear you could get, there was 2 or 3. So towards the end I ran one dungeon a few times just to get both 2 or 3 pieces of gear I wanted from the dungeon. I don't know how high difficulty level there is for each dungeon, but earlier, or you know, all that was available in the closed beta was normal and hard mode. I only ever did hard mode, so I can only really comment on that. It was pretty face rolling easy at the stage of the game that I was playing in. I would consider that to be, you know, if normal is much easier than that, I don't know. Really, you know, you're just gonna probably one-shot everything, and it'd be very difficult to die. The boss fights were, you know, well done and interesting. The bosses are active and move around a lot. They have a lot of, you know, visually and graphically interesting abilities. They have some personality. They're usually introduced through like a cinematic. Some of them have like multiple stages in the fight. There were different things where you'd like pick up a mirror and you'd have to reflect a light onto the boss in different phases. They have a lot of HP, so it's really a lot of just like beating them up and getting their HP down and avoiding their high damage abilities. Some of them I found it difficult to avoid some of their abilities. However, the game, I don't know if it will be like this in launch, but there was just a lot of you got a lot of these Phoenix feathers, which is kind of like a Phoenix down in Final Fantasy, so you can just res yourself whenever you die. It didn't really seem like there was a limit to this. I mean, I remember one fight having, you know, resing myself. I was fighting a world boss by myself, trying to get people to come join in, and because I just wanted to see what happened when you killed this world boss, and I was able to, you know, solo him for a while, but eventually, like, I would die, and I just kept resing myself, you know, throughout the course of the fight, probably 5 or 10 times, and there's no penalty, and I had, you know, 100, 200 of these Phoenix feathers, so it just, there was like no penalty for dying, basically, and I had an infinite number of healing potions, it seemed like. I don't know if it will be like that in release or not, but from my understanding, if you're paying the little bit of money, this is my biggest concern for the game, is that it's basically subscription based, from the aspect of it. Yeah, it is free to play, so you can play this game for free, but you'll be severely gimped versus anyone that's paying for like the crystalline aura buff. You get all those extra Phoenix feathers for just resing yourself, a ton of free potions, you get faster, I think you get an XP buff, you get extra gold. There's also a pet in the game, which I think is also sort of like a monthly subscription to get access to the pet. And the pet basically will allow you to have access to everything in a town, just wherever you are, so you can vendor items, you can repair your items. It has access to your bank. It has its own inventory, extra inventory space. It can do just basically everything in the game that you would normally expect you would have to go to a town to, and it automatically picks up all the items that drop for you. So really, if you're not paying for these buffs and paying for those different things, you're gonna be really kind of gimped compared to anyone that is. And it's kind of seems annoying that you'd have to pay for the pet on a monthly basis instead of a one-time kind of thing, to get access to all those different kinds of buffs. The pets also give you like different stat buffs depending on the pet, and they're kind of small, like it's 2 or 3% to a couple different stats, but you know, that does make a difference and it does add up. There's also cosmetic items in the game that give you stat buffs for each slot. It's like you have an inventory slot for all your gear, and then you have separate inventory slots for all the cosmetic gear, and you can choose to show or hide the cosmetic gear, but it does give stats, so you pretty much have to have it equipped. The cosmetics that were purchasable, they gave you, I think, 1% stat boost in each slot, whereas the ones that you just found in the game only gave you 0.5%, so you get twice as much for the ones that you pay for. And also there are mounts in the game, and I can't remember if they were a one-time purchase or if they were a subscription type monthly deal, but the purchasable mounts, so in the beta they gave everyone just a bunch of in-game currency so they could test the shop out. So all the stuff you were buying from the shop that will cost money later was you know, just free in the beta. But comparing them to the stuff that you get from the game that will be free, it was a huge difference. So like there's a Nimbus cloud mount, and each pet, you know, you hit the space bar and it'll do like a jump or something. However, the Nimbus pet, when you hit spacebar, it's on a super short cooldown. It gives you like a huge speed boost, like dash forward, so you could get places significantly faster just, you know, with this paid for mount than the normal mounts in the game because of the speed boost. Also, having the sort of monthly buff subscription thing, you get free instant travel. You get all these other, you know, game sort of not breaking, but really makes the game a lot easier. So you get free fast travel, you get just a ton of extra stuff. There was a lot in the game that it just seemed kind of, I'm sure in like the Eastern market, you know, since it's a Korean MMO / ARPG, they probably enjoy this kind of thing, but it's like almost every NPC has their own sort of ranking with you, almost like grinding reputation and WoW, but for every single NPC. And doing it gets you items. I think it gets you like different stats. There's like an account excuse me, an account level and a character level, so leveling up the account also gets you stats, which in a way is nice. So like when you level up alts later on, you're gonna have stat boosts, but it just seemed like everything you do in the game gives you like a passive stat boost. So it's like talking to different characters, leveling them up gives you stats, doing almost what are like achievements in the game, like unlocking achievements gives you stats, and some of them I don't remember if they were account specific or character specific, but it just seems like there is a ton of stuff in this game that's like very grindy in that way to get you different stat boosts. So to me it's almost like a chore. Like I just want to jump in the game and kill stuff and see, you know, watch the RNG drops, like just keep pulling the slot machine. So I mean, the game is cool, it looks cool, the PvP was really fun, the dungeons were fun, but there's just all this other stuff in the game where I don't know if I would enjoy it or not, or if I would even really have the time to put into grinding all that different kind of stuff. And I think it's later on probably the same thing with like leveling up gear. So it's free to play. I would check it out before you drop any cash on it. I mean, other than maybe just the starter pack for the first month if you want the head start and just to get a boost in the first month and see if you like it or not. But it's like 15 bucks, which for a game like that, I mean, 15 bucks, it's not a bad price to throw down, but you could check it out completely for free as well. So I would recommend giving it a try, but at the same time, in terms of its longevity, I don't know if I would play it that long or that much, because it just seems like to be able to enjoy the game and play it, you're gonna have to do all these chores in it and other stuff that you don't really want to do. That's just kind of a time sink. So those are my thoughts on the game, guys. So let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and remember to give them the D.